So here is my friend Ted, and kindly agreed to sharing in a conversation with me about all kinds of stuff. The first thing that we came up with is vulnerability, because
Mm,
you were saying something about how this awakening business, how sensitive and poignant it can be. So I thought I'd just let you talk a little bit about um, what's happening inside of you in terms of vulnerability, in terms of the sensitivity as this deepens in you, awakening deepens in you.
Such a broad question. I find that this process is it's taking me to places that give me a second here as it this sort of solidifies that I always wanted to go and always, I think, at a very deep level sensed that I was headed towards. And then the closer I got to it, the more I rejected it. And in the context of vulnerability, it's being very open, it's being very unguarded. Um, and that seems to move in both directions, not only to the people in my circle that I trust or my relationships, or whether it's at work or personal, with varying degrees, of course, but the vulnerability of looking inside and having it be directed towards myself,
Mm.
to really be looking in and examining things that I may have mistaken for identity, but maybe were old patterns, old traits, um, and seeing there's an inherent softness to it. I think I showed up with a naiveness, I think, or an innocence that I don't know. I know we all do to one degree or another. Mine seemed to be very strong because it got pointed out to me my entire life how sensitive I was and how unwilling to make assumptions, and things like cynicism or sarcasm were very foreign concepts to me.
Mm.
But as life progressed and I went through awful lot of painful, challenging, and sometimes violent situations, I found I layered on top of that in a protect type of capacity. But the last, I'd say the last 5 years of this journey, it's slowly started to unravel that innocence underneath. And then the last year or so, it's ramped up to
Mm.
the point where it's almost been scary to see how tender I am inside, to see how raw I am inside, to see how feeling I am inside of being. It's a paradox of being not identified with things and yet deeply affected by them. And it doesn't seem to matter what subject it is.
Mhm.
I live in a downtown area, whether I see people that are homeless, it's heartbreaking, or whether you see a feral animal out there on the streets that's suffering, or you see somebody that you know that's just clearly having a rough go of it, and your heart seems to go out to them. So this vulnerability is coming up, and it's presented a lot of challenges because it's the farther I go into it, the less ability I have to defend. So
Mm.
every time it shows up and it's in an uncomfortable arena or an area that I haven't touched yet, I call it, I get a lethal dose. I get a lethal dose of it. Um, I get the full force of it. I don't get a version that I can filter, a version that I can defend, or that I can sort of say, yes, we'll let this in, but this is too much, or how much I can let in.
I
It's the
see.
floodgates are open and you're just there with it. And you know deeply that there's nothing to do but sit there and be with it. You literally don't have the ability to try to distract from it.
Right.
And I got used to it, but the first several hundred times that it happened, it really took me by surprise.
I bet, especially being a male in this society and what and in within the structures that you had to go through and live through,
Mm,
the hard
hmm.
things that you're welcome to mention. There's that's absolutely not what you lead with, right? You lead with a hardness. Lead with don't mess with me, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I guess us women, we have more permission, we have more
Right.
permission to be soft and tender. But even then, it's like all, society, what we do to each other is that we basically put ourselves and each other in these channels. Like, you can do it, but this way. This is how it should look. And don't, not too much of this, not too much of that. For a woman, it might be a little bit the other way. It's like you could be tender, but maybe, things have changed along the way, but still there's a little bit of that implicit, but maybe don't speak your mind so clearly without softening it, like
Mm,
there's impositions on genders, right, on one another of how one should be,
sure.
how we supposed to be. And when we're really actually both, we were speaking about that before we pressed record, about how much feminine nature you contain. And
Yeah,
and and for me, I'm like liberating more of my masculine, more
right.
of the one that can speak without needing to pat, make sure everyone's okay with it. But it's coming
Hmm.
from, to me, it's still coming from the heart, but the heart is not always nice and soft and gentle. The heart can also be very clear and boundaried, right?
Hmm.
But for you,
Uh,
you're
yeah.
exploring the other version, the inverse, or it's exploring you.
Yeah. Yeah. And the softer I became, we'll just, real quick, we'll just cover the context real quick. So it was, um, I'll just do the quick Reader's Digest version just to understand how severe this was. It was psychological abuse as a child. It was violence from when I was old enough to get my hands up in front of me to defend myself from other people. Then moved to drugs, heroin, overdoses, suicide attempts, and finally prison. So these are the worst possible environments to have this. So this created a persona that I honed and crafted over years. Very heavily tattooed, shaved head, tattoos on my head, and all of that. So that I just wanted to bring that up, not necessarily to go into the full story, but just as sort of a context of what it's like to then move into this more naive state that I was in before any of this happened.
Yeah.
And everything in you screams, stay guarded. We create an entire persona that has nothing to do with what I would say was inherently me as a person or as a human. And every time there was an invitation to move into that, um, the entire nervous system lights up and says, absolutely not, do not go here. And yet the pull is irresistible. And I found over a period of time, there was this small but growing satisfaction, this kind of this rightness when I would move into this softness or I would move into this. Um, it just, you just go, this just feels better. This just feels better. It feels more natural. It feels more like home. This feels more like quote unquote me. This feels soft and this feels tender. But then the tug of war, the back and forth. So open, close, oh, this feels great. Oh, no, no, no. And then watching that literally, I don't know how many thousands and thousands and thousands of times that
Mhm.
that would happen. Um, sometimes many times during the day. But the pull is irresistible.
What is bizarre is that, you know, knowing you and who you are now, um, you have such a safe presence about you that is
Hmm.
partially, you emanate that because, oh, look at that sweet smile. Because oh, I love that. Because you're in touch with this and something that you came in with, it's evident. it didn't get buried. It didn't get buried by any of it.
Mm,
And
recurring theme.
but
Yeah.
it's also because of the hard life and harshness that you did encounter, that also marinated you to be soft and tender and and empathetic and compassionate towards, you know, what others go through. That also softens our heart. There's a Ram Dass has a teaching that he did that I listened to, called keeping your heart open in hell. You know, so keeping one's heart open in hell. Um, I was saying earlier about how, women are, for the most part, not all, because it depends on your upbringing as a girl, like where you're given permission to be tender and sweet and soft, but not so much having your no. Your no is not really as loud. Maybe even boys too. I could see that with my brother. His no wasn't quite so permitted either with my strict father. But what I did see is that just because there were certain things that were supported that didn't have to shut down for me, in terms of being vulnerable. It wasn't across the board. It was like I said earlier, this is allowed, but this isn't. So there's still a shutting down that happens, like because an identity creeps in. Is like one can have this kind of softness, but not the real vulnerability of really how I truly, truly feel. That was
Mm.
definitely suppressed. That was definitely put underground and put to sleep, except for with the right people and the right moments. But I feel so blessed and happy to have had those kind of, very good friends where I could be myself, or
Mm.
a special partner where that was part of the, connection, is for us to be authentically connected to ourselves and have that reveal. And I just remember, as awakening was started to deepen inside of me, um, that there was still lots of places that were waiting for permission to come
Mhm.
out, to be incorporated into the wholeness, within the wholeness, to so really, this is allowed now. I can be, so tender in this way. Oh, this is really allowed. I can be boundaried and say no here. I really don't want to do that. I don't feel like talking about that or going here or going there with you. Just all these things that were creeping out of the hidden shadows of, like, is this now welcomed? And that's the whole thing with in the unity, which really feels to me, the more you and I talk, is that you're going through a heart expansion and unity,
Mhm.
which is the reconciliation of all these parts that are wanting to come into the heart, into the light of day, and be welcomed and be seen and be made conscious. you know
Mhm.
that's the whole time of unity, that the embodiment stage of this that has been awoken to, which you've had some years ago. Remind me, how long ago was that? 4 years ago, 5 years ago? I can't remember.
Um, no, there, well, geez,
Yeah, yeah, when.
yeah. I think that they came in spurts, and I guess you could call them peak experiences, but there was always something that was left open afterwards.
Yeah.
But the largest of was that the really big one, that the two that got me were when I was in that apartment by myself, and I was basically incapacitated for 5 or 6 days with a whole bunch of shadow stuff that was coming up, and had no contact with almost anybody, just a very few people, and didn't eat or drink. I couldn't hold down water. So that was one that sort of cracked things open. And then more recently at that retreat where I just got blown open by Shakti, and that one felt was probably in terms of intensity was the most profound, but it was, I'd seen a whole bunch of smaller versions of it. And this one, it just went open and then stayed open. And I kept waiting for the thing that we hear when people go to retreats. I was open, and then within a few days, it closed down again. And it never closed down. I was sitting there kind of tapping my watch after about a month going, this is still the same. And then it just never went away. And so what that did is that became the catalyst where to make a a way of looking at it was like the doors opened enough that everything just kept coming up, and there was nothing blocking it anymore. And I was really, really surprised at what came up, and it was almost any and everything around old fears, old patterns, old habits, some wounds, some trauma, some shadow work, that type of things, but also just like what you said of looking, the reintegration. When you see something about yourself that is very tender, do I stuff it back down again, or do I bring this back in, or do I still have these responses in certain environments? Do I really need to now, after all of this work, apply so much pressure to fix it, or can I just let it be there? It's a tricky thing to navigate, because there can be hidden places where, but for me, just to be very blunt, when I felt like I'd done enough work on it and enough crying and enough really looking at it under a fierce microscope, and then you go, well, there's still some echoes of this stuff here. Can I just let this be here and go, this is how the body is configured, or this is what's in the body? I don't think that I could say that for any of these things until I had really directly looked at them. If they were something that I was avoiding, then maybe they would cause more problems. But now it's just, okay, this is how things are. And there seems to be this love wanting to come over into it and just say, this is okay. I'm no longer striving for perfection of the personality. I'm no longer striving to be the very, very best I can be anymore. You said it to me a long time ago, and I remember the first time you said it via text, and it really landed. You said, good enough is enough. And I don't remember what we were even talking about. I think I was struggling through something, and I read it, and I remember where I was. I was laying on my bed, and the email came through, and I read it, and I started sobbing, just crying, because it was just this benediction of this universal, it's okay. It's just okay. Everything is fine. So I think that, that one was really profound.
Man, I like
Yeah. So,
the
but you
saying.
said it. You said it though.
It's always new, like what did I say? No,
Yeah.
but good enough is enough. Good enough
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
enough.
Good enough is enough. And it landed like a ton of bricks. And I went, that's really, really good.
Yeah.
You know.
It's kind of something can relax there, right? When it's enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because what knows it's enough is wise.
Mm-hmm.
What knows it's enough is not needing it to be different or looking for more.
Right.
It's just like it's thank you, it's just like all is well here.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you throw at me, whatever comes up, all is well here.
Yeah. I think there was a desperation that showed up, pushing back at I now call it the exoskeleton that I built, the defenses that I built
Yeah.
around this very tender person.
Yeah.
And at some point, the futility of that and the deep dissatisfaction with that,
Mm.
you know, the desperation comes up, and I call him, I affectionately refer to him as little Teddy. And
And you have a
wanting
Teddy
to come.
picture. You have a painting up there, right?
I do, and it's very, yeah,
You can see the
it's
feet.
deeply connected to this whole, yeah, it is deeply connected to this whole
There's
there he
Teddy.
is right there.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
Teddy.
And
Oh, I love
Yeah,
him.
I call that. So it's deeply connected, that painting, to this whole thing, of that innocence, that for me, that little Teddy wanting to come to the surface and not only just be allowed to be there, but just move into that vulnerability, and just go, this feels more natural for me. This feels better. This feels infinitely more satisfying in the moment to moment, even if I'm frustrated, even if I'm crying, even if I'm afraid, even if I'm feeling anxious,
But isn't
because that's not necessarily me. That's sort of him coming up and going, "Hey, pay attention to me," you know.
but isn't it wild how vulnerability, when one really lets oneself be vulnerable, how there's it's just you're falling back into vulnerability, and whatever's coming, it's not it's almost like without a doing, it's a superpower
Hmm.
because it makes you transparent to what's coming up. So vulnerability, the state of vulnerability, is the opposite of defending and pushing back and resisting.
Hmm.
So a state of vulnerability would be kind of like good enough is enough. It's just it's a landing place that is healthy, wise, that doesn't need to defend and can let things be as they are and let what's coming come, let what it's going go. The state of vulnerability to me is how can you really hurt someone or be hurt when vulnerability is not protecting itself, when nothing's protecting itself. So that would be
Mm.
the state of vulnerability. It's
Yeah.
not no need to protect. So then there's this kind of like almost transparency of like vulnerability, and that would be where things are more likely to pass through and find their home and resolution in the heart or in the emptiness, wherever it needs to go. It can
Hmm.
pass through and alchemize as it's passing through because vulnerability is just the space of welcoming in the end.
There's a clarity to it,
Uh-huh.
like a place from which to operate, and it's, for me, it's the exact opposite of cynicism or sarcasm, having that fixed viewpoint of this is how things go. This is the predetermined outcome based on my defenses, based on that shell. So vulnerability is its antithesis. It's the opposite of that. We're no longer going, oh, this always goes bad for me. This is always terrible for me. And so that clarity can show up and just be, um, open to something that maybe I didn't see. And it took a whole bunch of times before it even registered when I was in that space of watching how people responded to me, which was completely different. And I felt like I was bringing my weakness to the table. I was saying things like, I don't know, or I feel uncertain, or I was crying, or I was having a moment of doubt. But all of it was from a very sincere place of like, hi, I'm signaling, um, I feel very small right now. I feel very scared, and yet I'm feeling very sincere and open and willing to share whatever it is that's happening with you. And um, to see how other people responded to it not only took a while to really recognize it, but it was really startling. And I thought I had always been certain that I needed to go around, whether I was at my job or anything else that I do, that I needed to communicate that I had a handle on things,
Sure.
that I have some wisdom, that I know stuff, that
Well,
I'm capable, that it's,
always to be a step ahead of anything that could happen.
mm-hmm,
Just to be, but vulnerability is not weakness. It's like that. That's why I said it's almost like a superpower
mm,
because it's like it's the opposite of what one has been taught. That
yes,
vulnerability is weak. That you're going to be open to being hurt, to being attacked. Vulnerability is the true vulnerability, the one that's not necessarily um, um, right below vulnerability is fear. Right below
Hmm.
vulnerability is fear of being hurt. But true vulnerability, when it's really accessed, what it's really is, it's an open door that keeps it staying open. It keeps going, 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 going. So if someone throws something at you, it's the opposite of boom. We stop somewhere, we're vulnerable, and it lands and it hurts. It's a missile that hurts, or
Hmm.
it's a punch that hurts. It's more like the true vulnerability, that it's like the secret key that we're learning still, all of us, is that is the gateway, honestly, the gateway to the heart and soul of life, to compassion and empathy, to our humanity, to how we
Hmm.
connect and can remain connected and care, is by letting ourselves be pierced by by pain, by what hurts. But because it's open there, it's up, the piercing can go through. It's not like you don't get touched. No, you get so intimately touched. And there's a welcoming it,
Yes.
like this divine pain, this divine hurt of being here, of really showing up, you know, being here. It's not for the faint of heart. It's tough stuff.
No. There is it. It takes courage. It absolutely takes courage. I will say that without saying, "Look at me, I'm courageous." That's not what I'm saying because I felt really that I had no other choice but to be courage. And courage is obviously is moving something while you're in fear. It's not having the fear, but it does take that. Um, but eventually, I guess
Can we
what
stop?
keeps coming up with
Can we talk about courage a little more?
sure,
Okay, courage, because I think
yeah,
that's something.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
It feels like such a human portal, like when you say it, it's almost like it takes the entryway takes a willingness on the human being part to to show up, to be like a yes. Okay, I'm gonna do this. I say yes to taking being brave and opening and not moving, not running away. Courage, courage. It's like a stepping up, isn't it?
Yeah, and here's my definitively boy type version, my definitive
Okay.
male type version, because I always, and I tend to resist it when it comes up, but every so often I'll indulge it.
Yeah.
Um, because I want to put it into a formula so other people can use it or quantify it. For me, there was a moment, and it started out as an urge and then began to be vocalized. I don't know where it came from, so I don't want to claim any credit to it. It just appeared there, and then something nurtured it. But the moment was this: is when I said, I the desperation to want to either keep moving forward or finish the awakening journey, however we want to frame that. And I think it's for me the reason I'm wanting to say it this way is because I think it's mission critical in a way. Is I said, I'm willing to be uncomfortable. You almost open yourself up to it and you go, okay, whatever's here. And I remember almost defiantly at first, and then more and more in an accepting way and it really felt like this. It felt like spreading my arms out, like just being completely unguarded and undefended and say, what do you got? Just bring it. Just bring it. Because I didn't have any, because you don't have any, for me, I was brought to the point where I didn't have anything left. I had nowhere else to go, nowhere else to turn. And that was my only sort of out, or you're calling it an in. I didn't have a choice. I was backed into a corner. So I went,
Uh,
okay, fine.
yeah.
You know, I
But
yield, I give.
still, I get it. Like I've been led to those places too. Um, and you're right. It's more like there's really no choice, but still something makes the leap, right? It's kind of cool.
Hmm. Yeah.
The making a leap is courageous, and that might be, it's almost like the human being leaping into the unknown, and that leap is you can't, it's almost, it's taken out of person, it's not the personal will anymore. It's like
Mm-mm, no.
maybe the first momentum is a little okay, but then it's almost like grace takes it over into the other camp of like, okay, this is where it's going. Well, you don't know yet, the feet haven't landed yet, but this is where it's going. It's going to this other place, the shore of sanity in the end.
Mm-hmm.
You're heading over into something more sane. And I'm just kind of like, I'm always surprised, like, why do some people not make that, not a leap per se, but why do some people stop? And I'm not saying it's wrong, but they don't go into the next step of the embodiment stage of the critical embodiment stage that is messy and hard. But it's like with you and with me too, there was never a choice. It was just kind of like, that's like, how did that happen? Like for you, like, was there ever a sort of like awakening, human being? Maybe I won't do that. Did you have a choice, or was it always blended?
I think, well, I suppose I have a very romantic version, which may or may not be true,
Oh,
but I'll share that. Um, I, I, I will say that I spend an awful lot of time wondering that after having been in the community and been in this whole process for now over 15 years. You can see it. You can see that some people move into that and some folks don't. You know, students, regular people, participants, teachers. You know, just the whole range of how far people have moved into the that arena. And I did wonder, what is that? I never came up with an answer because I'm sure it's deeply personal and it's energetic and it's on some sort of mystery that I don't know that we're ever going to really understand while we're in the human
not.
body. I had that Ken show, that first opening, whilst sitting in a prison cell, and I think it was a month or two later. I was still writing some kind of mild bliss, and I was still reading the few books that I had, and really enjoying sitting and just had been very self-contained in terms of dealing, with my other friends or inmates that were there. And I can remember very specifically sitting on the edge of my bunk, and it was very quiet, and it was like this thing came up from underneath. It didn't specifically say anything about taking a leap or vulnerability. It just said, I want the full Monty. I want the whole thing. I didn't want to be satisfied with the opening that I had had.
Mm.
I want the whole thing. And I can't tell you that I generated that. It was there and it showed up, but it was like a prayer. And the romantic part about it is that I laugh about now is something heard that and said, okay, because there was a deep sincerity to it. I can still, I couldn't tell you what I ate for breakfast yesterday, but I can remember that moment with tremendous clarity.
Well, I can,
And I feel like
I'd
that
like,
was the defining factor.
well, for sure. I'd like to suggest that sincerity was it itself within you. I mean, it
It was
really,
always there. Mm-hmm.
it was, it was already married to the like the potential of you was already engaged with what it was meant to become.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, it wasn't a new sentiment because I'd had a few experiences years and decades before with things like hallucinogens or having, crazy non-dual experiences or or visions, um, and remembering how those profoundly impacted me.
Mhm.
And it was still that sense of every time that I was there, I went, this is home. And so years later, after I'd forgotten about those,
Mhm.
um, there was just a pull. There was always just a pull to move into that tenderness, to move into that vulnerable authenticity. I'm not really sure what the word is, but that
Well, it's a
sincerity I'd like.
realness. There's a
Mm,
realness that that, truth with a capital T, it uses the little t truth. The capital R reality uses the little r reality. They're not, they're just, it's like on a spectrum, kind of like this line. Here's capital T and here's little t. And we're there's really no difference. Little t would be little truth, would be realness, would be authenticity, would be sincerity, would be
Mm,
willingness to be honest, be truthful to oneself, telling the truth, meeting it, honoring it. See, then that's the other
mm,
piece. Then that's a part of growing up, right? Is we might hear it, be in touch with truth on a little level, like whether it's telling the truth, but honoring it helps grow it into the full-blown reality of living truth. For me, like living truth requires these micro movements and decisions of being authentic, living truthfully, honoring the moment, what is wanted, what is needed, what wants to be said, what should not be said, just listening and learning how to listen and helps navigate
mm,
life. And then that navigation becomes just like one becomes part of the big river that is always on its way to the ocean. It's always on its way to the ocean. And it's also reached the ocean. It's reached part of it is already flowing into the ocean. And the other part is collecting rainwater water, and little tributaries are going into it. And it's always on a path of going to into the ocean and growing in its givingness and its
mm-hmm,
surrender and its willingness and it's like its destiny. It's that to me is what living is that we are in the now living, honoring truth living, and at the same time while knowing in some way being already cognizant of the destination, which is to say the ocean in this metaphor. But still, there's still an ever-present now moment for me, at least,
mm,
Ted, of just like during the day, just honoring this knowing of how what life is wanting, and not as separate from life, but what life is wanting, this flow of what life's wanting, and sensing when I go off a little bit, like I do too much of this, and it's not nourishment, it's not true nourishment.
mm.
Um, not hitting the mark quite right. What that did you know what the real meaning of sin is? Isn't
To miss the mark.
miss the mark,
Hmm. Yeah,
not
yeah.
hitting the mark quite right. And I'm not into the whole thing about sin, but I'm just saying, and just like, oh, I didn't say that quite right to my daughter. She's bristling a little bit because can I get can I and even apologize then, but then kind of go try again this way. And then you can feel, oh, that there's a way in now with one another, that I was
Hmm.
missing the mark, being too, you know, worried or whatever. Yeah.
I'm just exploring a topic that I'm going to be sharing on some other in on a different platform for me or my channel. And I think what has really been here that's connected to what you're just describing is, especially for those of us that who have experienced some very, very extreme situations in life, is the discernment in between that intuition and fear. And I'm you're speaking from a place where you've had so many years of navigating through this that it sounds very nice and very pretty flowy. Well, it's been as the last few years as all this stuff has really started to come up. Really trying to hone in into something that might look like intuition, but it's really a fear, like fear masquerading as, oh, I don't think I should do that. where's and trying to discern what place that's coming from.
Yeah.
And I think I brought it up initially to say that if when I first started moving into that, or if someone else listening is moving into that, that it's not always clear. It's not, and it tends to be a little bit of stumbling around and some repetition, and then that's where that courage comes in to maybe take. I had to pause. I have had to stop. I've had to spend, rather than acting on something, spend a whole hour or an entire day in a tremendous amount of feeling and releasing, and that could look like crying or anxiety or terror, and then revisiting it when I was in a calm space, but not just blindly going, my intuition says that, oh no, I don't think I should be doing that. So
Hear you.
when it's come up for other people that are doing that in front of me, I can pretty easily, pretty quickly sense. I'm like, oh, that looks like fear. That doesn't look like a flow state. It doesn't look like an intuition to me. But
Yeah.
to them, because there's a guardedness or defending, they may go, no, no, this is what my gut's telling you. I'm like, I think your gut is clenched into a ball right now. But you don't say, obviously you can't. There's no room to say
I
things
think
like
that's
that,
like
of
bad
course, because I think it's
digestion.
rude.
I think you're having digestive
Um,
issues. That's not
yeah,
that's not intuition. No, I hear
yeah.
you. I just want to give an example really quick. Someone close to me last year didn't listen to her gut. Someone close to me. I'm not going to say who because that is breaking confidence. But she her boyfriend was really trying to get her to do this like a paddle board with like being pulled on a boat thing. I don't know, out in the lake. And and this person is very fit and everything. And she said, I just don't feel it. She kept saying, no, I don't feel like I want to do it. I just don't feel like.
Mm.
And her boyfriend was pushing, pushing, pushing. And finally she said, okay, I'll do it. But her gut was telling her not to do it, something. She hurt herself pretty badly. I mean, she's okay, but she hurt
Oh,
herself. And to this day,
yeah.
there's an issue. And I thought, and I even had to say, but in a, how do you say this without sounding, moralistic?
Smug.
Yeah, how to say things. Yeah. But it's more like it should be empowering. Like, oh, life will give us these lessons when we don't listen. And that's how we learn. And I had the same thing. It hasn't, and still can be. Like, I can mess up here and there with not listening. It can be in some big things too. But life will say, okay, you're not listening. You know, you have this torn whatever, meniscus or whatever. You're so it'll put it, and then the more that we start to honor and listen over time, because we're being forced, like, okay, you're not listening. How about now? You're not listening, and how about now? And you start to go, yeah, I'll listen here and there. Oh, and it's like we start to grow that muscle, that antenna that you're just talking about. Like it's not easy for everyone. That's one of the things that I'm really aware of. And the antenna of learning how to listen, and uh, you have to honor even the small little voice inside, and it'll become louder and more clear. And then how when they talk about the razor's edge, what they mean by
Mm.
that is that the more you listen, the more narrow gets life becomes in terms of like, how about now? How about now? And when you don't listen, you're falling off because it's asking you to be the listening, not just listen, to become one with the listening, as the listening, so that it is more of life living versus these hiccups, these little hiccups. That's very human.
Hmm. I think the subtlety and nuances of this navigation increase exponentially.
Yeah.
They
Well,
really.
where are you at
It's,
with that process, do you feel? Are you getting better at listening and honoring what you know to be true?
I'm at stage 6.
Okay, there's 10
I'm just
stages.
no,
I'm
no, no, no.
making that
I'm
up.
just kidding.
So if there's 10
Just being silly.
stages, maybe
Um, Well, I don't know if I could tell you where I was at, but I do know that because I've, in the last, especially year,
Yeah.
I've really taken a deep dive into these trauma patterns and these deep identity structures, always surrounding love and safety, always love and safety, which is a common theme. I've heard it all over the place.
Yeah.
That the flavor tends to be, it, a lot of the time, it was not checking in with my body
Mhm.
and feeling the warm, fuzzy feeling, and then the quiet, calm voice
Mm.
that maybe you experienced. For me, it was moving into the body, feeling the fear response, and then saying, move through that fear response. Because there was a sort of a direction right on the other side of it. But in order to get to that direction, I didn't land on a warm, fuzzy spot and then moved. I moved through a ton of fear and where everything was saying, don't do this, run the other direction, don't do this at all. And so I had to, that was where I guess the courage came in. And that has been a challenging place to live from. And yet, um, which is in complete contradiction to saying, okay, I'm feeling fear, therefore it must not be intuition. See, this is subtle stuff, right? Is that almost without exception, every time I moved through that terrible fear barrier that would paralyze me or cause me to cry for hours or whatever, and then landed into here's the direction I want, here's the thing I want to do, here's the conversation I'd like to have, here's the decision I'd like to make. Life was very, very kind, was very, very kind. And it yielded almost immediate results, almost every time, which was, I found, I didn't notice it until after about 10 of these decisions where I had to move through a
Mhm.
lot of this, but it was so sweet and so gentle that every time I moved through it, and then this, some of it was without going into detail, some of it was very ordinary and mundane. Somebody might respond in a certain way, all the way up to like very woo woo and very magical of like, wow, I can't believe you just said that, or I can't believe this just happened, and everything in between. So I've been in a bit of grace in that arena where it's really allowing me to flex that muscle whilst still in some level of residual reactivity. And it's not like that all the time, but when it is, um, something else is taking care of this for me. It's just, I'm just asked to move through, to stand in there, to not run away from whatever is coming up in the body in terms of emotions, to not immediately get pulled away from guard, defend, hide, attack, run, all of the old messages that are coming up.
Mm.
So it's fascinating. It's settling quite a bit, but it was rough for a few months.
I know it's what big learning. I do want to qualify that my way was also through the body initially.
Mm,
My body was telling me that I was betraying myself.
hmm
I would get stomach aches or gut clenches or I would just feel this like this sort of guarding, like something's not right here. And if I
hmm
didn't listen and I overrode, then I wouldn't be listening to that intuition voice, which was coming through the body as a message telling me that's not for you. Go this way, go that way, say no, walk away. That person's not for you. Whatever that work, that whatever. My body has always been telling me all along. Intuition has been all kinds of ways, a subtle intuition and a knowing, and then also the body being a really healthy, strong, supportive gatekeeper. But I didn't.
hmm
It took a while for me to really learn and listen. And there is a difference between listening to, I see what you're saying about fear and even defending, like being shut down and fear versus this is not good for you. So to be able to sift through, that took some time too. Like, is that person really like, let's say I did have a boyfriend for a while. Every time I was with them over long periods of time, I would get belly aches.
Mm,
I mean, I literally would get sick. And it's like no brainer after a while, like, but part of me didn't want to listen fully because so much about it was good. There were so many things
right.
that were just right. He was good with the kids, and he was a good man, and a good communicator and kind, and like, why, what was saying no? And it was this
Mm,
some part of me, I had, it took a little while, like, 5, 6 months. It was like, is this my pattern of wanting to run away, from something good? Is this my pattern or is this some kind of vulnerability place that I'm just not letting this person in? And so I had to like explore all these ideas I had versus just, no, my gut's telling me something. It doesn't
right.
have to make sense here. It doesn't even have to make sense so much here sometimes. Sometimes the gut knows, sometimes the heart knows. But in the end, I did walk away. And it was so much easier than I thought. It was kind of like it was a dream. It was almost like I was involved in a dream that wasn't even necessarily for me. It wasn't my dream. It was a good dream. And I was already
Hmm.
going through a deep awakening. So I have to add that piece. It was like I was already in unity consciousness. My heart was already doing a lot of processing. That was a nice dream, but it wasn't mine. And guess what? His former wife stepped in after I left, and they adopted 2 kids, and they had the dream that he was meant to have. He had
Oh,
that
nice.
dream. Yeah, it was nice. Kids from El Salvador that needed, I mean, that was a good dream. And for me, it was so perfect. I just got moved. I was moved along in the way that life all along wanted me to be moved along.
Mm.
That's what I'm talking about. It was my body that was telling me, and I finally like, it takes a good while to really learn how to be attuned, like a tuning fork, to live how living this life is without a doer,
Hmm.
the identity, the self, the separate self, you know. And the contractions and all those things that can co-opt knowing also. It takes a good long time.
It's endless. For me, it's endless repetition.
Mm.
It's understanding that my nervous system was wired a certain way, and nervous system regulation um, is a big thing for me. And when I moved into this greater sense of vulnerability and then moved into situations that were triggering that, the nervous system went haywire, went like because I no longer had defenses. I no longer had any way to guard from that. So whatever it was I was feeling, it was that lethal dose that we talked about in the beginning of just getting blasted. And the repetition was basically kind of it was very simple, but it was twofold. It was one was check in with my environment because my safety things were around violence, so protecting the body. Is everything okay right now? And it sounds so remedial, but it was so effective for me. Is everything okay now? Then the next one would be to sort of assess the situation I was in from maybe not more conceptually, but maybe what I knew of the situation. Can I take what I'm seeing at face value? What have I been shown already? What's my evidence? Um, and then sitting with it.
Mm.
The third one was the most before I did anything, before I moved into, before I made a snap judgment, before I made a decision. That last one seemed to be critical for me of sitting, and it could take 5 minutes for it to settle down. It could take a week to settle down. And was I willing to just be with whatever until I felt the natural settling? And then I might ask myself the question again or investigate the decision again and go, how do I feel about it now? Most all of the time when I had let it settle, the
Mm.
message and the decision was very different than the first one that came up.
Mm.
When it generally wasn't run or hide or defend or attack. It was, no, okay. It was a lot of, let's see, let's just let this play out, or let's make a decision in this direction.
More
But
more neutrality.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
really. And with that came a real sense, and I found that was pulling me away from these real deep sort of trauma embedded identities
Mhm.
and pulling me back into this infinitely more vibrant sense of presence that went, I can't be hurt in these situations anyway. It
Ah,
doesn't matter.
this
What
is
is it that
lovely.
I truly am? How can
Yeah,
that be hurt?
right.
So maybe I experience pain because if I've made an incorrect decision, so what? That's not the game for me. That's not the To not experience pain is has been the goal of this awakening journey for a long time.
Yeah.
It's been, so what if I experience pain? How is it what I truly am? How is that affected? And I was never able to come up with an answer that was satisfying enough for me to respond from that place of identity.
That's the end of the fighting being polarized, like this is heaven and this is hell,
Mm-hmm.
pain, this is comfort. Like you said, that you've awoken to the presence, to presence.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an object, to presence, to this that is everything's rising and falling in. So that's nice. So you're not living at the like underneath it, even if you experience contraction still and go through polarization, there's a landing that takes place inside of like it of safety, true safety of what this is really
Mm-hmm.
containing it all. And that's why you're able to be doing it to this degree, to this level. That's why you're able to.
Mm. And it starts to become very clear that over time we start to see that even you can be well into this journey, this trip, have some level of identity fallen off, that we're still pushing and pulling. There's still some avoidance. There's still some, I'm going to manage my experience. I want it's what is it called? The common way of saying it: seeking pleasure and avoiding pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you go, I don't think that's the end game here. And I could start to see it when I watched other, say, people speaking about it on YouTube. I guess teachers, or whatever, still kind of selling this. Here, if you do this, you won't feel any. Or here's 3 steps to avoid your pain.
Mhm.
Here's 10 steps to overcoming fear. And I went, I don't even understand what that is anymore. And those things, when I came across them, were beneficial at the time because they were helping regulate the nervous system. But eventually, I
Mhm.
think with that vulnerability, with that courage, we get into um, kind of throwing those out. You don't throw out the boundaries, obviously. And I need to say these qualifiers because you're going to put this out to the world. We don't throw out the boundaries or protecting, the safety of the body, or food and shelter and stuff. But it's it almost doesn't. In the deepest sense, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for me whether I'm feeling pain or feeling um, joy. And it doesn't mean that I still don't prefer one over the other.
Well,
It's more.
can I make a
Please, I'm sorry.
no, no, no. I'd like to say make a, a suggestion, I guess, that it's due to the fact that the reason it doesn't matter anymore is because you've said yes to both. You've said yes.
Okay. Yes, I recorded something to myself and on a recorder on my phone, and I went, and this is going to fly in the face, obviously, of the concept of no doer. So we're gonna move that out of the way just for the sake of the conversation and say, I said, if I'm making a choice,
Yeah.
it felt like a very conscious choice from a very alert, awake, present. There is no problem in it because, and then, what was it that I said? Where is the suffering in that? if I'm choosing to make this, do this, whatever this is, and it could either end up in pain or pleasure, I don't see that how that's suffering, nor do I see that a reason that I need to avoid it, because it was so deliberately said, however this unfolds
Yeah.
is how it unfolds.
Well,
I don't
I
know if that's
just,
dangerous to say on the interwebs or
no,
not.
it's
So if you
not.
want to
It's not.
qualify that, that's great.
No, no. I recently saw a very famous spiritual teacher say the thumbnail was how not to suffer. And I thought, you know how not to suffer? And it's not probably what this person said. How not to suffer is not to transcend and go to a place that it's free of suffering and you just stay there and you just stay there. How not to suffer is to be willing to suffer, to not care. You suffer, you don't suffer, that's not the point. Who's suffering
Mm,
anyway? Who's suffering anyway? But suffering is, you know how like enough is enough?
sure.
Suffering is, suffering is. So if you're not resisting suffering, and suffering is allowed to be, suffering is really allowed to be. You have a yes to it,
Mm,
you're not pushing it away. So then you're not caught. Suffering is allowed to be. Suffering is allowed to be. So does it matter anymore whether you're suffering or not if it's allowed to be? Does it really matter? Are we still playing ping pong with suffering and saying yes, no, when it's allowed to be?
right.
Why push it away? Just say yes to it all. Say yes to it all. And then what is meant to be and how one is supposed to be and navigate will do. Will just do itself. But say yes to it all in the end. Say yes to fear. Say yes to denial. Say yes to I'm humble. Yes, I'm not humble. Yes to
Hmm.
suffering. Yes to I'm bound. I'm free. I'm bound. I'm free. Say yes to it all. And then what happens? Keep free falling. That's my personal medicine that I give myself always. So just free fall. No, there's no need to stop. There's no need to ever stop.
This whole part of the conversation has got to be so dramatically unappealing for somebody who's just starting.
Oh,
It
well,
would, it,
we're
you know,
we need to end in a minute because we could go on
sure.
anyway.
Yeah.
But people, we have our attention span.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, but and we might go on in another time, but it doesn't, is it unappealing really? If you had heard this, let me just ask myself, if I had heard just say yes to it all from the beginning, something in me would probably rebel, but something in me would also be curious about that invitation.
Mm,
There's
okay.
something beckoning about it. There's a beckoning to it. You mean really? Just say yes to being here and to it all, to love and pain and suffering and all of it. Just say yes. And then what happens? And see what happens. I'm not saying all those things will continue ruling your life. Just see what happens.
Mhm.
Isn't that what you're doing?
Yes.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
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 Midway through the journey, I remember cluing into this deep wisdom, this fact, and I went and I saw through all of it, and all of you guys were charlatans, and it was a psyop. It was a total game, and I remember getting so mad all the way back to the Buddha, like everybody involved.
Oh, good.
I went and I can remember just sitting there kind of fuming, going, "This is I'm just going to say this is bullshit because you guys are just asking me to just accept whatever's happening." And I remember how much fierceness I was like, I don't want this to be about acceptance. I want this to be about transcendence. I want this to be about bliss because I was suffering so deeply in the moment. And I can just remember that it's about 5 years in of just this huge rebellion that came up. Had I heard the yes message before, I might have said, sure, that seems all right. And then when life just started to crumble around me, I went, I was duped. You guys.
I
Yeah,
know.
I felt really duped. I
I
felt
mean, I
like
haven't
this
been
wasn't what I
saved. I
signed up
haven't been
for.
saved. That's because there was still so much more content to discover
Yes.
the yes in.
Yes.
You were never,
Infinite amounts that I hadn't even touched into yet.
yeah.
So,
It's not a dupe. You know what's the dupe is when it's one-sided. Say yes to being fully human and make your way through life through using your will. That's what we were taught
hmm,
in school. That's a dupe.
right.
Okay. The other dupe is you say yes to be untouched. Say yes to live in that way permanently. And just all this is Maya, all this is just, it's just illusion. Just stay in your nice castle in the sky. That's a
You
dupe.
go into the transcendent and then you build a little barrier to keep the rest of it.
Oh yeah. And it's like, oh, it's always the I that's caught. Well, how about saying yes to the I? Just say yes to the whole dang thing.
Mm,
Um, Remember Nisargadatta, his teacher that he came across, I don't even know how much he had to do with him, but it was profound, his interaction with his teacher, because he said, you are that. You're that.
mm.
And so, the journey of discovering what that is. Well, if I'm that, then everything has to be that. So it's all included, right? Duh.
There we go. That's it right there. I've even said on in moments where I was moving to that vulnerability where I've had to say, you know what? I feel completely identified. I feel completely like a separate person. It just willingly just going, yeah, I'm just the exact opposite of what I've been trying to get to this entire time. And just letting that, there was a satisfaction to it of just going, no, I'm just, no, no, I am 100% identity and ego. Just letting that be there. Because why not? It wasn't going to change anything if I
If
pushed it
you're
away.
resisting that, then it's got you hostage. Anything we're
Hmm.
resisting has us hostage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So.
So there we are. We figured it out. No. No, it's the starting point. I always feel like I'm always a beginner.
The free fall never stops. And I keep waiting for it. Every so often, I have these moments of like, I still have periods of disorientation. I'm like, really? So, still more rabbit hole. I'm still falling.
Oh,
Okay. Everything's still unfamiliar.
yeah.
I thought it was going to end very subtly. I thought it was going to end up being familiar. Even I was going to be familiar with free fall, and the free fall changed, turned into something else whilst still being a free fall. And I'm like, oh, this too. Okay. And
Uh,
that seems to never stop. It seems to
no.
never end.
You know what I realized recently? And it's kind of like one of those moments like, duh, again, is that this is, you know, what we're opening to is the infinite. It's the infinite opening
Mm.
to itself, within us. And no wonder why I always feel like a beginner in a certain way. I feel
Yes.
I feel the infiniteness, but it's also like if it's infinite, there's an opening to that and feeling, sensing that. But then there's always the now moment touching the infinite now. And it's always like this beginning, that it's always an entryway into the infinite. And I don't know how to explain it. What am I saying? um, that, oh, it's humbling. It's like, that's what it is. It's like that. So you got a sense of being one with the infinite, but you are such a beginner still. If it's the infinite,
Hmm.
imagine how much that is and deep. That's what it is. It's this constant humbling process of like, you ain't no hot shit. This is
Right.
infinite, infinite. Yeah.
Well, and that gets painted by whatever the emotional content is at the time. If I'm feeling pretty blissful or just relaxed or pretty calm, then when I touch into that, I go, I become curious, open, and ooh, it's all magical. But if I'm in some level of resistance or in having just a little too much pain or discomfort for the day, then that shows up again, it's not curious anymore. I'm not seeing the wonder of it. It's startling. And I go, oh man, here we go again.
Well, you're
So that
still being,
whatever I seem to be feeling, yeah, I'm still cooking through
you're
this stuff.
still
So
cooking through
it's
it. I
someday,
understand.
yeah,
Well, this has been fun, you guys. Anyone who's hung in there this long with us. Yeah, we could go on and on too.
yeah,
I mean, we're just
yeah,
starting to get cooking
for the
here.
rest of the afternoon for sure.
Yeah, it's just getting cooking.
Yeah.
Oh, but this is our first conversation, and I really appreciate you being here with me. Yeah. And you have your own
Mm,
channel. We'll put that on
yeah.
there. You share your own journey too. And I just have a soft spot for those who are real, and I see you as being very real,
Mm,
you know. I have a soft spot for that in life, within life. Yeah. So you stay there and I'll hang
mm.
up, and you want to say something to the audience as a goodbye or anything, you're welcome to.
I'm glad everybody's here. Not everything that can be said will necessarily resonate, but just whatever we said, we'll just say said love. That's it. I don't have anything to say beyond that.
It is all about
Yeah.
love. Let's share it. It's about love.
Yeah.